All right, good afternoon. This morning, the Secretary General held the inaugural meeting, the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance, which was launched today. Some of you may have been here a little earlier for a briefing by the Alliance co-chairs and the UN Chief Economist, Elliot Harris. The Alliance is made up of 30 globally prominent CEOs and other leaders in the world of business and finance, and will work with the Secretary General in scaling up long-term financing and investment from the private sector towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. At the official launch, which took place just a few minutes ago, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed said the Alliance's work can take concrete actions to increase the supply of resources available for investments in sustainable development, channeling capital to countries and sectors where it is most needed. The potential is enormous, she said, and she added that the demand for sustainable investing is growing. This afternoon at 3 o'clock, the General Assembly Hall, the Secretary General will deliver remarks during the tribute to the memory of Diogo Freitas do Amaral, the President of the 50th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Mr. Freitas do Amaral passed away last week. He also served in numerous positions in the Portuguese Parliament and government, including as Deputy to the Assembly of the Republic, Minister of Foreign Affairs on 2 occasions, and Minister of National Defense and Deputy Prime Minister. The Secretary General has asked his chef de cabinet, Maria Luisa Ribeiro Viotti, to represent him at the ceremony of enthronement of His Majesty the Emperor of Japan. That will take place on the 22nd of October. Turning to Syria, Geir Peterson, the special envoy for Syria, met in Damascus with Syrian Deputy Prime Minister Walid al-Mualem today, and in comments to the press afterwards, he said that they had discussed the situation in the northeast. Mr. Peterson repeated the Secretary General's strong appeal that we should end the fighting immediately and that there needs to be a cessation of hostilities, and we're all extremely alarmed by the humanitarian consequences of the crisis. He said that he and the Deputy Prime Minister had also discussed the launching of the Constitutional Committee and had detailed discussions on how to move forward with the launch of the committee at the end of this month, which remains unscheduled. Mr. Pedersen will continue to have discussions with the co-chairs from the government list and the co-chair from the opposition. And on the ground in the Northeast, despite very difficult challenges, the UN and our humanitarian partners continue to deliver aid and provide basic services to people in need where access allows throughout the northeast of the country. United Nations staff remain in the northeastern part of Syria. Emergency food rations for 83,000 newly displaced people, hygiene kits, and drinking water have been provided as a priority, and efforts continue to keep pipelines open to ensure the continuation of assistance. A polio vaccination campaign is also being conducted in camps. The environment has been made more complex as areas change control after agreements and military advancements. Due to changes on the ground and ongoing insecurity, some NGO partners have had to transfer international staff who are operating in the northeast out of the area. Others have had to temporarily suspend operations. The 1.8 million people in need in the northeast have been supported through a complex system that combines humanitarian aid deliveries from within Syria and with cross-border operations from Iraq delivering aid and providing basic services. Humanitarian workers are committed to staying and delivering as much as possible for people in need, minimizing service disruptions. The UN continues to reiterate that this requires safe, sustained, unimpeded humanitarian access to all people in need. The UN also reminds all parties of their obligations under international humanitarian law to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. Yesterday in Lebanon, firefighters from the UN Interim Force in Lebanon joined the Lebanese Civil Defense and the Lebanese Armed Forces in putting out raging fire in the Mazrat al-Dar village, about 15 kilometers northeast of Saida. UNIFIL firefighters from Austria, supported by Tanzanian military police personnel, joined the Lebanese emergency services with fire trucks and water tankers, following requests from the Lebanese authorities. Indian and Indonesian peacekeepers from UNIFIL Hospital in Nakora also provided standby ambulance and medical services. UNIFIL sent the emergency assistance because of the damage that the inferno could cause on local communities. And turning to the Central African Republic, UN peacekeeping mission in that country has released its most recent human rights report, In September, 173 civilians were victims of abuse and human rights violations, an increase compared to last month. Armed groups were responsible for over 90% of violations. The mission says it is continuing its advocacy and sensitization on human rights and the implementation of the peace agreement with armed groups, government, and the general public. We also have an update on the situation in Birao, the town located in the country's northeast hit by violence last month. The mission announced a new joint mission this week with representatives of the government, the African Union, the Economic Community of Central African States, and the UN to help bring back calm and stability to the city. In other developments, 14 ex-combatants from an armed group involved in the September clashes were handed over to judicial authorities. Others who did face prosecution were relocated in another city. And today is World Food Day. In his message, the Secretary General highlighted the observance as a global call for zero hunger, for a world where nutritious food is available and affordable for everyone, everywhere. However, more than 820 million people do not have enough food to eat, and climate emergency is an increasing threat to food security, he said. This year's World Food Theme Day is Our actions are our future, healthy diets for a zero hunger world. The Food and Agriculture Organization and its partners believe that affordable solutions to reduce all forms of malnutrition exist, but they require global commitments of actions. I have a few budgetary updates for you. I think I was asked about some of the other peacekeeping cost-saving measures taken outside of UN headquarters. In Geneva, temporary press officers are not being recruited. The regular press officers and editors will ensure that coverage is provided to meetings of the human rights treaty bodies until the end of the year. Those staff are voluntarily giving up taking annual leave during the body's session. Recruitment of temporary audiovisual staff will be discontinued, with the result that TV coverage of mandated meetings will be restricted. There'll be photo coverage will no longer be insured, as the UN in Geneva only hires contract photographers. Staff will not pursue procurement activities, and non-obligated travels will be canceled. Just like in New York, meetings and events will not take place after 6 p.m. or on weekends. Energy-saving measures will be put in place throughout the building, and elevator services and others will be cut back. And Nairobi, any purchase of any new equipment will be suspended. Individual contractors will not be hired, and staff have suspended any outreach activities outside of Nairobi. And our colleagues in Vienna are also undertaking cost-saving measures. Lastly, on a musical note, our very talented colleagues in the UN Chamber Music Society organizing a concert for the Bahamas, and that will take place at All Saints Episcopal Church on Sunday at 7 p.m., and there will be more information in my office. Ali.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have a question, two questions, in fact, but one of them is regarding the escalators. Here, the journalists are badly affected by this measure, and we wonder why, while stopping them, you wouldn't allow the journalists and other people to use the escalators as regular stairs. This is one question. The other question is, while we haven't heard any plausible reason for why the Secretary General hasn't condemned the Turkish attack on Syria, we see that the Secretary General is invited to Turkey by the end of this month to attend the 6th Istanbul Mediation Conference, and he is the keynote speaker. Isn't that might be interpreted as a consent from the Secretary General to what's happening by Turkey in Syria? Thank you.
Taking your questions backwards, I have nothing official to confirm on any possible travel to Turkey at this point. Obviously, nothing the Secretary General has said or done should be interpreted as any consent. And thirdly, on the escalators, it's a measure that obviously impacts everyone, everybody who works on this floor, whether journalists or staff. My understanding is that non-running escalators it's unsafe to use them, but I will check, and it's a very valid point.
I follow up on, because I have this conference, and the Secretary General is confirmed to attend and to be the keynote speaker.
I don't doubt the veracity of your information. As always, when the Secretary Generals travel, there may be announcements by organizers and so forth. No travel is official until there's an official announcement from our part. Mr. Klein, then Mr. Abadi, and then Evelyn.
Yeah, I apologize if I missed this, but do you have an update on the numbers of displacements? I think yesterday you said it was 160,000.
No, I don't have any update. I was not given any update on the numbers.
Okay. And secondly, from the UN personnel and partners that are on the ground in northeast Syria, have they reported from their observations an increase or decrease or about the same level of violence from the Turkish invasion or incursion?
I mean, as compared to...
Well, just compared to yesterday, day before.
No, I mean, we had a report
week.
from the Human Rights Office, I think, yesterday. I will check if there are any more numbers. You know, for our humanitarian colleagues, the big challenge is obviously when front lines change, when areas get under control of different military, of different armed groups. It's about renegotiating access, and that has had an impact and delay. Mr. Abadi, then Evelyn.
Thank you, Stéphane. The Secretary General wants an immediate ceasefire in the northeast of Syria. But what does he think of the President Erdogan's argument that he first has to get rid of terrorist organization on his borders?
We're not going to react to this in that statement for the Secretary General. It's clear that there is no military solution to this conflict. Evelyn.
Thank you, Steph. Have you got any information on what the Security Council might do in its attempt on Syria to put the toothpaste back in the tube? And secondly, since you mentioned WFP, is there any update on the investigation of alleged abuse there?
What investigation?
Well, there have been accusations by the UN and others of abuse by some of the top officials.
No, I'm not aware.
I think you spoke about it. The U.S. is investigating 2 senior officials over allegation of sexual abuse. That was earlier in the year.
Okay, I have nothing new on that. On the Security Council, I mean, it's a question to ask the ambassadors. For our part, we are providing briefings today under other matters by Mr. Lowcock and Mr. Chiari on both humanitarian and political front. Thank you.